Week 7, matchups that matter, going through everything that you guys need to set your fantasy football lineups in week number 7. That being also that the Baltimore Ravens and Buffalo Bills are on bye. So we do have to dig a little bit deep. We got like 37 wide receiver injuries and no running back injuries somehow. I'm not mad. I'm not salty as a 0 RB and hero RB bro. But we do have to dig a little bit deeper this week. So as we go through each of these games, I'll give you some deeper names to start if you guys need some deeper options out there. The matchup breakdown that we have here is we got another London game. So again, West Coasters, get up early or set your lineups before you go to bed. 1 p.m., we got 6 games in that window. 4 p.m., we have 4 games in that window, a Sunday night game, a Monday night game. And then, of course, to piss off the East Coast unk here, we do have another 10 p.m. kickoff on ESPN on Monday night, which is the Seahawks and the Texans game. But let's get it kicked off with Los Angeles Rams taking on the Jaguars in their home country of London here. The Rams are favored by 3 points here. Los Angeles implied for just over 23, over under a 44.5 points, the under catching a little bit of the steam. The pace of play is pretty fast in this one. Both of these offenses run pretty up tempo. And then Los Angeles has a really, really nice DVOA advantage as a passing unit versus the Jaguars defense. When we're talking about who we can start on both sides of the ball, of course, the biggest lingering question in this game is, will Puka Nacua be healthy? Because Puka Nacua, single best wide receiver in fantasy football right now, is coming into the game dealing with an injury, has not practiced Wednesday, has not practiced on Thursday. It is Friday morning as I'm recording this, so we'll have to wait and see if he practices today. I would lean towards him being out, knowing that the Rams have a bye next week. There's a very good chance that he won't play in this game, so that would obviously upgrade Devontae Adams and Kyren Williams, because Kyren probably gets a little bit more work out of the backfield in the receiving game. Matthew Stafford, absolutely a streamable quarterback, knowing how good the advantage is for the passing offense. The Rams are also implied to throw the ball quite a bit, as I'll get to in the stat of the game here. Travis Etienne going to be in your starting lineup for the Jaguars. Brian Thomas Jr., same thing. We did hear some quotes throughout the week talking about Travis Hunter's usage and getting him more first read targets and that kind of thing. They've mainly been using him as a gadget guy in some games, and then some games have been a downfield usage. We kind of want to marry the two. It would be an ideal world, in my opinion, if Travis Hunter got 8 to 10 targets per game, 3 or 4 of them gadget stuff, and then the rest real wide receiver stuff. So we'll see what happens there. I think using Hunter like a Zay Flowers in Baltimore would probably be the best usage for him. So we'll see if that changes against the Rams. They have a reasonably beatable secondary. Rams defense in play and both kickers in play as well. The stat of the game for this one, the Jaguars are one of the most slanted pass funnel defenses in football. They are one of the best against the run, 32nd in pass rate over expected allowed. Teams are very much choosing to throw the football against them, and the Rams as an offense are 4th in pass rate over expected in total. So I think they should let it rip in this game with or without Puka, and that obviously would mean great things for Devontae Adams. If you need to dig deep in this game, I do think you could throw Jordan Whittington out there, or maybe even Tyler Higbee if you needed a streamable tight end, assuming, of course, Puka Nacua is out. Otherwise, I would not start those guys. Getting into the 1 p.m. window, we have the New Orleans Saints taking on the Chicago Bears. The Bears are 5-point home favorites against the Saints here, implied for over 26 points, which is one of the highest numbers you've seen for the Bears all season. Over under of 47.5. The money is even. Sharps don't really know what to do with that over under. Pace of play is the fastest on the slate by quite a big margin as well, because the Saints and Bears are both running quite up tempo. The Bears do have the 11th biggest DVOA advantage against the Saints defense. You're starting Caleb Williams. You're starting Rome Odunze. Everybody knows that part. DeAndre Swift, keep an eye on him, because he was downgraded from a full participant in Wednesday's practice to a limited participant in Thursday's practice with, I believe, a groin injury, and that's something to keep an eye on. So make sure Kyle Menengai is rostered. If you have an open bench spot, he might end up, surprisingly being the starting running back for the Bears if things go poorly for Swift today and Saturday. And then also, too, DJ Moore, after last week's Monday night game, was admitted to the hospital with like a groin injury. He is back at practice in a limited capacity as of Thursday, so we'll see what happens with that. If he does end up being out, Luther Burden, the second-round rookie, could end up seeing a bigger role, and we actually saw him get a little bit of an increased role on Monday night. And then, again, keep an eye on Colston Loveland's usage as well, because he was coming off that injury. I do think he could be one of the bigger waiver pickups of Week 8 if you want to stash him at the end of your bench. Alvin Kamara is probably going to be a starter for you for the Saints side of things. Kendre Miller, I picked up in the Flock League. If you guys watched the vlog, I traded Xavier Worthy away from Marvin Harrison and Kendre Miller. Does sound like Kamara's here to stay. He's probably not going anywhere, but at the very least, Kendre Miller, a good handcuff. In the meantime, Olave and Shaheed, definitely hearing some rumors that Olave could be on the move for sure. Possible that the Steelers or the Giants or some of these wide receiver needy teams could go and make a trade for him. In the meantime, he's definitely in your lineup. And Jawan Johnson, I don't think anybody's messing with him, but if you absolutely were desperate, you could throw him out there. And then Chicago's defense and kicker are also in play. The stat of the game here, Saints defense is allowing the 4th most rushing yards per game to quarterbacks, and they're a top 6 matchup overall in fantasy quarterback scoring. So I think Caleb Williams, one of the best starts on the week this week. And again, make sure to stash Luther Burden, Kyle Menengai, and Colston Loveland with all of the kind of young upside pieces that the Bears do have. Moving into the Cleveland Browns taking on the Miami Dolphins, we are hearing word that this is supposed to have like 50+ mile-per-hour winds. So maybe not a very good game environment as opposed to, some of the other dome games and whatnot this week. The over-under 39.5 and dropping steadily, under catching a lot of the steam. Pace of play is pretty average, but the rest of the game environment is not really exciting. The only people you should feel really confident in starting in this game are the 2 running backs, Quinshon Judkins of the Browns and Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. Jalen Waddle definitely still a viable top 24-ish play at wide receiver, but just keep in mind he could have a dud given the weather implications that we have here. Jerry Jeudy, again, I'd probably steer clear of him just given that we have weather implications in this game. And then both tight ends are in play as well. Darren Waller scoring 4 touchdowns since he's been a Dolphin, and then Harold Fannin with no David Njoku, which is not a guaranteed thing yet, but it does look like David Njoku could be out for this game. He was not practicing Wednesday, was not practicing Thursday, dealing with, I believe, a knee injury or an ankle injury. I can't remember exactly what the lower body injury he is, but he does have a long history of injuries, and Harold Fannin is going to see an upgrade if he is out. So definitely of the 2 of them, I would prefer to start him. Miami Dolphins defense absolutely in play, as are the Cleveland Browns defense, just given the game environment here could just be low scoring overall. Browns defense very good, Dolphins defense not so good, but they're playing the Browns, and the Browns do play well at home. I actually prefer the Browns defense of the 2 of them if I had the option. Stat of the game here, the Dolphins have also surrendered top 5 running back scoring weeks in back-to-back games. Rico Dowdle with the number 1 scoring week 2 weeks ago. Kamani Vidal with a 23-point-per-game performance against them last week. So big Judkins smash spot. We talked about him as a trade target on Wednesday's video. Make sure to go and send out some offers for him. Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Las Vegas Raiders, 12-point home favorites for Kansas City. This is a game that is very much a yearly tradition. Kansas City beats the shit out of Vegas at home in Arrowhead, over under 45.5, over catching a little bit of the steam. Kansas City's DVOA a nice advantage. You're going to start all your Kansas City Chiefs because this is a great game environment for all of them. Patrick Mahomes, of course, top quarterback in fantasy football right now. We do have Rashee Rice coming back from his suspension. He should be in your lineup. It doesn't sound like he'll be on a pitch count or anything like that. And Xavier Worthy, given the game environment, the implied total, and all that kind of stuff, you are going to be starting him as well. I can't quit Isaiah Pacheco. I think you could still low-end flex the guy because in back-to-back weeks, he's posted a season high in snaps, and he is starting to play a lot better than what he was playing at the beginning of the season. And, of course, Travis Kelce is a startable option as well. On the Raiders side of things, Ashton Genty is the only must-start, but I think the second closest thing to a must-start on the Raiders is Michael Mayer. Without Brock Bowers, he is a top 10 tight end in my rankings. We don't know for sure if Brock Bowers will be out, but based on when their bye week is and all that kind of stuff, I do think Michael Mayer will be alone in this tight end core again. 80% of the routes, plus he scored a touchdown last week. If you need a flex option, Trey Tucker and Jacoby Myers are both in play, but neither are must-starts by any means. Kansas City's defense and Harrison Butker also in play. Stat of the game. What would it be without an Isaiah Pacheco? Copium stat of the game here. After setting season highs and back-to-back weeks in usage, over 60% and then over 70% in snaps last week, Pacheco per ESPN sees a run defense that's allowing 4.7 yards per carry to inside zone runs. The Chiefs are second in the NFL, nearly 1/3 of their runs being inside zone. So I do think we could see some Isaiah Pacheco 60-plus rushing yard and a touchdown type of game if he continues his positive momentum from the past couple of weeks. Moving into the Philadelphia Eagles, taking on the Carson Wentz probably led Minnesota Vikings. The Eagles are 2-point road favorites in this game. It doesn't sound like J.J. McCarthy is quite ready to come back from his injury, which I'm still not sure if he's actually hurt or if they just benched him overall. Philadelphia is implied for almost 23 points, the over-under 43.5. Kind of a ho-hum game environment overall. Jalen Hurts is probably in your lineup given his rushing ability. Saquon Barkley, of course, in your lineup as well. Both A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are reasonable flex wide receivers. Both of them are inside my top 26, 28 wide receivers on the week, so you can definitely throw them out there. Although the Minnesota Vikings, I saw Hayden Winks tweet this out, Puka Nacua has more receptions this season than any wide receiver core that the Minnesota Vikings has played. If you add up all the receiver receptions every single game of the Vikings season, it is less receptions that Puka Nacua has this year. So they have been very stingy against fantasy wide receivers. Dallas Goedert definitely getting a lot of design usage. I don't know what it is. As a Dallas Goedert manager, I've noticed this a lot, but for some reason, they're giving him all of the like valuable design touches in the red zone, shovel pass bullshit. So, keep it up. I mean, I have Dallas Goedert in a lot of leagues, so I feel pretty good about that. And I drafted a crap ton of him in best ball. TJ Hawkinson in play, but probably not a must start. Of course, you are starting Justin Jefferson and Jordan Mason, given the workload that he's getting. We do have Aaron Jones first eligible to come off of IR next week. So if Jordan Mason has a good game here, maybe look to sell high on him. And I do think you can flex Jordan Addison, stream the Philly defense, and Jake Elliott, the kicker. Stat of the game here, per ESPN, Jalen Hurts holds the ball the third longest in the NFL, nearly 3 seconds per drop back is how long he's holding the football for. Vikings defense averages the 5th fastest time to first pressure. This may be the matchup that Hurts really struggles in, especially, like I said, knowing that the receivers also have a very difficult matchup themselves. Carolina Panthers taking on the New York Jets at home for the Jets. They are still 1.5-point underdogs. This is a game environment that is not very friendly to fantasy production, particularly on the Jets side of things, because we do not have Garrett Wilson most likely in this game. Start Justin Fields as a, low-end quarterback, one, because of the rushing, because of what he can do with his legs, but not really any reason to do with his passing, because I don't expect him to get a whole lot done in this game. Bryce Young is a streamable quarterback in this matchup. Both running backs, Breece Hall and Rico Dowdle / Chuba Hubbard, whoever ends up being the starter. If Hubbard is back, I do expect him to get the majority of the work. By majority, I mean a slight majority. And if Hubbard is out, of course, we do expect Rico Dowdle to be yet another dominant RB1 caliber play. But they do have bad matchups, so just keep that in mind. All the New York Jets wide receivers, don't mess with any of them, because if Garrett Wilson is out, I have no reason to start anybody else. Tedero McMillan is expected to see shadow coverage from Sauce Gardner, who has been playing better in recent weeks. He did hold Cortland Sutton to like a pretty down performance last week. I do think if you need a tight end streamer, Mason Taylor is not a bad option because no Garrett Wilson, right? And he played 90% of the snaps last week, which I'll get into in a second. Carolina's defense in play for sure, given Justin Fields' history turning the football over and that kind of thing. And Carolina's kicker also in play. Stat of the game is relating to Mason Taylor, 90% snap share for the first time in his career. Panthers giving up the second most fantasy points per game to tight ends, and no Garrett Wilson in this one. Most yards allowed to the tight end position, and Fields is actually facing what is the worst pass rush in football right now, with the lowest pressure win rate as well. So this is not a defense that you should be scared of, at least as it relates to the pass defense, but there are no options outside of Mason Taylor, which is why he's a decent start in this one. Patriots taking on the Titans, little Mike Vrabel revenge game. Patriots -7 on the road here. Tennessee, even at home, is a touchdown underdog. New England's DVOA, a top 8 advantage. The over catching a little bit of the steam here. Start all your Patriots, man, because Drake May against the Titans, that is a nice matchup for him, even though they've been kind of stingy to fantasy quarterbacks, specifically as it relates to rushing quarterbacks. You are going to be starting Stephon Diggs. You're going to be starting or at least flexing the running backs, Ramondre Stevenson and Trevion Henderson. And then Hunter Henry, also a decent tight end option as well. On the Titans side of things, it looks like Calvin Ridley is going to be out for this game. He suffered a hamstring injury last week. So that puts Alec Manor in flex territory for me, because he has been running the majority of the routes for the team already. And now without Calvin Ridley, I expect him to have 6, 7, 8 targets in this game. And then the running backs are both flex options as well. Tony Pollard, the early down guy, Tajay Spears, if they're losing by 7 or more points for the majority of this game, I do think Tajay Spears has a chance to catch 4 or 5 passes in this one. New England's defense and kicker both definitely in play. A little betting stat of the game here. The Titans are 0-10 against the spread at home dating back to last year. That is the longest such streak in like 50 years for a team at home against the spread there. So definitely start all of your Patriots players that you can. Moving into the 4 p.m. window, we have the New York Giants taking on the Bo Nix-led Denver Broncos. This is kind of the, Spider-Man meme. These two quarterbacks are, darlings of mine. As exciting whites, I do think that both of them are quite similar. However, I do think that after an electrifying start to the Jackson Dart era, it could come to a screaming halt in this one, because the Broncos at home, that defense is starting to play a lot better, and the Broncos are 7-point home favorites, and playing in Mile High is no joke there. So you're going to start your Broncos for sure. Bo Nix in your lineup, J.K. Dobbins in your lineup, Cortland Sutton in your lineup. Even a streamable option like Evan Ingram in your tight end position is definitely fine. Just temper your expectations for the Giants, because Cam Scadaboo, as great as he was last week against the Eagles, that was a home game for the Giants. It was Thursday Night Football. This one's in Mile High, not a division opponent, not on Thursday Night Football. So don't really love the matchup for the Giants offense. I am not starting Jackson Dart. I know he runs the football, but I do think he could kind of get blown up in this one, maybe have a couple of turnovers. But Wan'Dale Robinson should also be in flex territory as well, given the targets that he's seeing. The Broncos defense, definitely a streamable option, as is their kicker. Stat of the game here: after a huge win on Thursday Night Football for Philadelphia, the Giants face the second most efficient pass rush in football at home. Denver, in my opinion, is going to tee off. So sit everybody other than Scadaboo and Wan'Dale for the Giants, and make sure that you do not have Jackson Dart in your starting lineup. That is the sit of the week at the quarterback position for me. Indianapolis Colts taking on the Los Angeles Chargers here. The Chargers are 1.5-point home favorites. A nice game environment. Third highest over-under at 48.5. The over catching the most steam of any game on the slate as well. So this one should be pretty high scoring, high pace of play. Both teams have top 20 advantages. The Chargers definitely the bigger advantage, given the Colts defense has not been very good. Justin Herbert's in your lineup. Jonathan Taylor in your lineup, of course. Every cast of character that you should start in this game, from Herbert to JT to Kamani Vidal to Ladd McConkey to Quentin Johnston, who's now practicing again with the hamstring injury. Keenan Allen, a decent flex option. Michael Pittman, a starter. Josh Downs, assuming he plays. He's currently dealing with a concussion right now. Maybe he doesn't clear the protocol in time. If he doesn't play, maybe you could even dig deep on an Alec Pierce type. And of course, Tyler Warren, the tight end of the Colts. So everybody in the lineup. The only real concern I have is if you start Kamani Vidal thinking he's going to get exactly the workload he got last week, I'm a little bit worried that backfield might be a little bit closer than people think, just because the Miami Dolphins were such an easy matchup. Kamani Vidal was the hot hand. I just want to see one more week of it before I say he's an every week starter. He's still a top 24 running back in my rankings this week, but don't start him over proven guys that their workload and that kind of thing. And same with Daniel Jones. He's been very good this year, but this is a tough road matchup across the country against a really good defense. So I don't think you have to start him by any means in this game. Both kickers definitely in play given the over-under. Stat of the game here. This is crazy. I heard Patrick Claybon on NFL Daily say this. In his Giants career, Daniel Jones completed just 8 total passes of 20-plus air yards. He's completed 5 already this year with the Colts in just 6 games. So it just goes to show you that Daniel Jones just truly had no downfield help in that New York Giants situation. Even last year with Malik Neighbors, he was benched for about half the season, eventually cut and gone to the Vikings and whatnot. So Daniel Jones definitely having a career resurgence in Indianapolis this year. The Indiana Jones hive is taking over. Green Bay Packers taking on the Arizona Cardinals. This could be another Jacoby Brissett-led Arizona Cardinals team. Ian Rappaport and a couple of the other insiders have kind of alluded to the fact that Kyler Murray won't be ready for this game. He is still practicing right now in a limited capacity, but it's possible with the Cardinals having a bye next week that they would give Jacoby Brissett one more week. My thought process is this is a home game for you. Your season's kind of on the line here. If you don't win this game, you're going to have to dig yourself out of a hole after the bye. So I would just play Kyler Murray if I were them, but we don't know what his injury is. Over under a 44.5. Under catching a little bit of the steam. You're going to start Jordan Love in this game. You're going to start Josh Jacobs in this game. I think both Packers wide receivers, Matthew Golden and Romeo Doubs, are very good flex options in this game as well. And of course, you're going to start Tucker Kraft in this game. So the Packers side, pretty straightforward. They're implied for 25 plus points. And then also on the Cardinals side, if Kyler Murray plays, which is still up in the air at the moment, I think he's a streamable option because this is a matchup in which the Cardinals are at home. It's a matchup where Kyler Murray can maybe run the football a little bit, but if he is out, then obviously you can't play him. Marvin Harrison Jr. is kind of still awaiting word of whether or not he'll clear the concussion protocol. As of right now, if I had to guess, I would say Marvin Harrison Jr. will clear the concussion protocol because he practiced in a limited capacity Wednesday and Thursday. The way it works is basically if he practices today either in full or in a limited capacity, and he's symptom-free and that kind of thing, which it kind of seems like he is based on everything that he's done so far this week, then he'll probably get cleared on Saturday in the concussion protocol, and he'd be ready to go at that point in time. But we don't know for sure, so as of now, don't count on Marvin Harrison Jr., but know that he could end up playing. I'd say there's probably about a 60 to 70% chance that he ends up playing in this game, and he has a pretty brutal matchup against the Packers corners. Bam Knight is the starting running back, quote-unquote, for the Green Bay Packers, or for the Arizona Cardinals, but very similar to the Chargers situation. The weekly usage that we see out of the Cardinals backfield, I don't read too much into it. When we hear stuff like Michael Carter's the starter and then Bam Knight's the starter. I feel like that's an ever-changing situation. So I don't really want to rely on Bam Knight as like this guy that's going to be a starter until Trey Benson comes back. Maybe he is, but I would say cautiously right now, he's a low-end flex play. And then Trey McBride, probably going to get peppered in this game, as I'll get to in a second. Green Bay defense and kicker both in play here. My condolences if you do play Trey McBride, because without Marvin, if he doesn't play, the Packers defense is first in receptions allowed to the tight end position, and they are third in yards allowed to the tight end position. So if Marvin is not out there, I think we're looking at probably a 10 to 12 reception game out of Trey McBride, just given Jacoby Brissett was dropping back like crazy, and also Trey McBride is that good, and he's always open and that kind of thing. So moving into the most exciting game of the week, we have the Washington Commanders taking on to the Dallas Cowboys here for fantasy purposes, a 55-point over-under, which I believe is the highest of the entire season so far, or at least top 3 on the season so far. The Commanders are 1.5-point road favorites right now. Maybe this line will change a little bit given that CeeDee Lamb was ruled in and, that kind of thing. Terry McLaurin and Debo still banged up. I could see this going and flipping the other way where the Cowboys are 1-point favorites or 1.5-point favorites at home. But we'll have to wait and see on that. The over catching a little bit of the steam. Pace of play is super high. Both offenses with top 7 matchups against the opposing defense. Pretty straightforward here. You're starting everybody. On the Commanders side, Jaden Daniels, Bill, both wide receivers, if they play, Debo Samuel and Terry McLaurin, who's playing, we don't really know at this point. But if they play, they're in your lineup. And I do think Zach Ertz is a very viable tight end streamer. And then on the Cowboys side, Dak Prescott, absolutely in your lineup, and CeeDee Lamb back with no limitations in your lineup. George Pickens in your lineup, Javonte Williams in your lineup, Jake Ferguson in your lineup, and, of course, both kickers can be in your lineup as well. So this is just going to be a fantasy bonanza by all indications. Both of these quarterbacks are top 3 quarterbacks for me on the week. Only Patrick Mahomes, the other one that's not in this game. The stat of the game here is the Cowboys are dead last by a country mile versus fantasy running backs. Rico Dowdle showed us how easy it is to run against them last week, and now we get Bill after a season high in snaps the week before. So this is a really good matchup for Bill to have his breakout game, because the Cowboys are just basically free cash to any fantasy running back with a pulse. So definitely it should be a fun game environment for fantasy purposes. Moving on to Sunday Night Football between the Atlanta Falcons and the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers are 2-point home favorites in this one, 47-point over-under. This game environment has so many injuries and moving parts that it's hard to even prognosticate what's going to happen, because we don't know if Purdy's going to play. We don't know if Pearsall is going to play. We don't know if Jennings apparently playing through 6 broken ribs or something. We don't know if he's going to play or if he's going to be limited or whatever the case is. As of now, I would say the only clarity we have on the 49ers is that Christian McCaffrey is Christian McCaffrey, and he's going to play even though it's a terrible matchup. And George Kittle should be back for the 49ers, and he is in your lineup, assuming you've been stashing him on your IR. And even Kendrick Bourne is still in play, even if Kittle is playing in this one, because Kendrick Bourne has been playing well. If Mac Jones starts yet again, then we should have another him and, Kendrick Bourne connection from their Patriots days. On the Falcons side, it's a lot more easy to diagnose. Bijan's in your lineup, London's in your lineup. Pitts is probably in your lineup, given where he is at the tight end position, like a top 15, top 12 tight end on the season here. And then Michael Penix, if you need a streaming quarterback, the 49ers defense is now without Fred Warner, as we saw last week, and of course has been without Nick Bosa for a couple of weeks here too. So this is not that bad of a matchup, even though it's on the road for Michael Penix, and they've been notoriously much better at home. San Francisco's defense is in play, although I would say there's probably better options. And then the kicker for the 49ers is also in play. The stat of the game here is that this game features the 2 best running backs in fantasy football, both Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson, averaging over 24 points per game in fantasy PPR leagues. Bijan faces the number 23 ranked defense without Fred Warner now, along with Bosa, whereas CMC, who averages just 3.1 yards per game, faces the single hardest matchup in all of fantasy for the running back position. So of these 2 guys, I would expect Bijan to probably have the better matchup and the better game. And it's possible the Falcons actually win this one, given that state, especially if Mac Jones is starting yet again. But we'll see if Purdy returns. We'll see if Pearsall returns. I would say as of now, I would expect both of those guys to be out. But we'll see what happens for the rest of the week. Moving into Monday Night Football, the 7 p.m. Eastern kickoff of my Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Detroit Lions. Lots of injuries on both sides of the ball in each of these teams, but the Lions are favored by 5.5 here, over under of 52.5 points, so expected to be a high-scoring game. The over catching a lot of the steam. Both offenses have a top 10 advantage over the opposing defense. Baker Mayfield's in your lineup. Rashad White is in your lineup because we are still without Bucky Irving, and he's been a top 10 scoring fantasy running back in back-to-back weeks. Mike Evans looks like he will return. He was a limited participant in Thursday's practice. And again, remember that on a Monday game, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practices. So we'll see what happens for the rest of the practice week with Mike Evans, but I do think he'll end up suiting up for this game. Emeka Egbuka is already ruled out. Chris Godwin's already ruled out. Bucky Irving is already ruled out. So the Bucs are shorthanded, but they do have Johnson & Johnson, Cam Johnson, and Tez Johnson, plus Sterling Shepard to go along with Mike Evans and Cade Otton. So I feel like they can still get things done in the passing game here. Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. You could pretty much fire up all of them because the Buccaneers matchup here, the Lions are implied for 29 points. So you feel pretty confident that points are going to get put up on the board. And also, too, the Lions secondary is completely battered with injury, plus Brian Branch is suspended for this game. So I do think if you need a Hail Mary swing, if you need an upside swing, and you need to dig deep this week, Tez Johnson's not a bad option. Neither is Cade Otton if you need to even flex him, let alone play him at your tight end spot, just because the Lions secondary is really battered and banged up. And given that the Bucs are on the road and Baker Mayfield's playing MVP football, there's a good chance that even if Mike Evans is healthy, he can bring along more than just one guy in this game here. So stat of the game for this one is that the Bucs have used motion more than any team in football the last 3 weeks, and the Lions are fourth worst in the NFL against motion as an EPA per play defense. So this is a matchup where I think Josh Grizzard should be in his bag trying to cook up some motion plays and whatnot, and we'll see how it pays off. I'm cautiously optimistic that the Bucs can win this game, but I do think we probably fall, given that we're 5-1. We kind of deserve to lose a game here, especially given the injuries that we have, and the Lions play very well at home. So moving into the final game, and then we'll get into the streamers, we have the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Houston Texans at home. I can't lie to you and say that I'm going to watch this entire game because it starts at 10 p.m. Eastern on Monday night, and I'm absolutely sick of these East Coast Unk games here. Over under of 41 points, not really exciting. Over catching a little bit of the steam. The Seattle DVOA advantage is quite nice. If you're going to stream a quarterback this week, I do think Sam Darnold's a decent option. Just keep in mind that the Texans are a pretty strong defense. I also think that CJ Stroud's a decent option, but keep in mind that the Seahawks are a good defense, particularly at home. So game environment-wise, this could end up being lower scoring. Kenneth Walker is probably in your lineup, as is Zach Charbonnet as like a flex option. Woody Marks, maybe coming out of the bye, they give like more work to him. But as of right now, you still got to treat him as like a low-end flex kind of play that he is. JSN and Nico Collins are, of course, every week starters. So those guys are going to be in your lineup. If you need a streaming tight end, I think that both of them are in play here between Dalton Schultz and AJ Barner. I do prefer Schultz because he has the better matchup. And then I do think you can stream the Seahawks defense, and both Kaimi Fairbairn and Jason Myers are definitely in play at the kicker position. If you need to dig deep in this game, I do think that Christian Kirk is a decent option. He might even still be on your waivers as well. Stat of the game here is that the Seahawks' #1 passing EPA per play offense and #1 success rate offense now faces a defense that is top 4 in both. So this is strength on strength here, which is why I think that it might end up being a lower scoring game environment. So into the streamers, if you guys are looking for tight end help this week, Harold Fannin against the Dolphins is the best one, like I made reference to if David Njoku is out. He is obviously going to have a huge workload, a lot of snaps and a lot of targets and whatnot, especially short passing game. That's kind of his role, especially if the weather is a factor. Michael Mayer, again, if no Brock Bowers, he's a great streamer. Zach Ertz, game environment, 55-point over-under. Mason Taylor, like I said, no Garrett Wilson. Easy matchup for him. And then Evan Ingram, like I mentioned, also Giants defense, not very good. Evan Ingram got some more usage last week against the Jets. That could continue. Moving into the streaming quarterbacks, not a great week for streaming quarterback. Like if you guys have Lamar or Josh Allen on bye, it wasn't an excellent streaming week. Hopefully you started Joe Flacco or Aaron Rodgers because that apparently was the right answer. But if you still need a quarterback, Darnold versus the Houston Texans, again, bad matchup, but he's been playing well. Stafford versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Even without Puka, I still like him as a streamer. Trevor Lawrence against the Rams. He runs the ball a little bit. It's kind of a matchup that is almost like a home game for the Jaguars. Stroud versus the Seahawks. Again, if you want to throw a Monday Hail Mary, that's fine. And then Bryce Young versus the Jets. Moving into my top 5 defenses, my top 10 defenses, and then kickers as well. New England defense versus the Tennessee Titans. My favorite defense this week, Kansas City versus Las Vegas. My second favorite, Denver versus New York. Green Bay at Arizona. Cleveland versus Miami. Miami versus Cleveland in that same game. Carolina at New York Jets. Philadelphia versus Minnesota. And then also Seattle and Jacksonville versus Houston and Los Angeles, respectively. And then moving into my top 10 kickers, and I actually still have Boswell in here, so I'll give you some honorable mentions here. Brandon Aubrey, the best kicker on the week. Boswell was a good play last night. Cameron Dicker, Chase McLaughlin, Kaimi Fairbairn, Harrison Bucker, Matt Gay, Eddie Pinheiro, Jake Bates, Michael Badgley, and also I would give an honorable mention to the Jaguars kicker Little, and then also Josh Carty in that same London game. London games feel like field goal fests to me every single year, so those are my streamers. That was matchups that matter. Hopefully you guys got some value from this video. If you did, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Let's rack up the like button to 500 if we can. And of course, if you watch these videos and you aren't subscribed, there's about 55% of you guys out there. Really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button, and also be sure to check out everything we got going on over on Flock Fantasy. You could start a 7-day free trial right now and see what the site has to offer. Promo code FSE when you sign up, 30% off any of the packages. You can use our trade calculator, which is customizable to your league settings. You play in a 1 quarterback start 9, it's going to give you a different answer on trades than a 10-team, start 7 with a tight end premium and all that kind of stuff. It's very customizable, has that system to be able to properly value players. So definitely check that out using your free trial. Check out the My Teams feature. You can see who has the best running back cores, wide receiver cores, quarterback cores, tight end cores in your league. Use that to make trades. I use it all the time. It's one of the best features out there. Our rest of season rankings are up to date. Our weekly rankings are up to date. Dynasty rankings going through a big time update. About 3 weeks ago, we updated them. We're going to do another update of that, plus the trade value chart this week as well. So definitely check out all that good stuff. All that information is available to you over on flockfantasy.com. So check that out if you're interested. That'll be linked down below in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out. I'll talk to you soon.